Right, let's get some analysis on those US elections with Dr. Bob Wekesa from the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of the Witwatersrand. Dr. Wekesa, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. How would you characterize the US election and the counting process so far?
No, I think like everybody else, the experience has been one of major suspense. The counting has been excruciatingly slow, and it's all eyes on the elections. So in a sense, it is much slower than the past elections, for example, the election of Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton in 2016, or indeed the early elections of Obama, Bush too, or Clinton in earlier phases, where at this point in time we'll have known the results. But I think this process has been slower, essentially because the mail-in vote, or postal vote for that matter, which couldn't be counted before the direct vote that was made yesterday, went into nearly 100 million, in fact, votes. And therefore, those actually have to be counted physically, one by one. There's no electronic or digital approach to it. And all that, counting process, as well as the legal battles being mounted and the shouting at each other across the aisle between the Republicans and Democrats, makes the election quite nail-biting, suspense-filled, drama-filled, and so forth. Yeah.
Joe Biden seemingly one state away from winning those 270 electoral college votes. Just break down that system for us, how it works and what could happen.
So what it is that the U.S. electoral system is such that you don't vote for the individual, actually, although it looks like you're actually voting for Trump or Biden, or indeed the Republican or Democratic Party. The system is set up in such that voters vote for electors, and every state has its own number of electors. One of the biggest in California with 52, I think Florida has 29 votes, which is why it was a major battle state won by Trump, in fact. So on the basis of the states and their electoral college votes, the announcements are made for every candidate as they win a state. So what it is now is that Biden has won about 264 if you go with the AP Associated Press polling, or 253 if you go, for example, with New York Times. And therefore, that is what suggests that he's just left with one state. If he gets a state with 20 votes, it is done. Because once a candidate reaches 270 votes, he has reached more than half of the total 538 votes, and therefore carries the day. So what it is that I think everybody's just waiting for that magic number of 270, and then it will be over. However, the elections will not be really over even at that point in time, because counting will continue for the next couple of days, if not weeks, to come to the very, very final tally. However, the announcement of the person who wins the electoral vote for every state is based on an assailable majority. If someone has so much, votes, a very high percentage, then is beyond reproach and therefore carries the day. I think a final aspect that one has always, that we tend to forget, is that because the U.S. electoral system is state-based rather than federal, the announcements are made at the state, and those are final. And usually is the so-called calling in, which is actually done by media houses, which is also very interesting because in many other places it's like a national electoral vision or entity that does that. So I think that's some of the aspects that are unique to the U.S., but also will explain what's going on.
So U.S. President Donald Trump wanting a recount in Wisconsin, threatening legal action and wanting vote counting to be stopped in some areas. What's the latest?
I think the latest is that in fact, when he addressed the media and the nation, in fact, in the White House, he actually indicated that he wanted to go to the Supreme Court right away. But I think the strategy is that instead of just jumping to the higher court on the first incidents, he is starting off first with mounting legal battles in states that were very close to Paul. Wisconsin is one of those. And I think is that there might be rigging, as he has always said. I think that's why he is then therefore mounting a legal battle there. And also, I think that also introduces another aspect that sometimes we miss out. Because every U.S. state makes its own electoral laws, so that there's no uniform law on elections across the 50 states. Some states actually allow for a recount. Wisconsin is one of those. And in Wisconsin, I think Biden won by, a very thin, lead, which is just a couple of point something, percentage. And I think, Trump feels that, and his campaign feels that, if they fail to secure Wisconsin, they actually see his chances melting away. And therefore, I think that's the target. And we'll wait to see the outcome of this battle. But I think that the same, I think that the Democratic Party has also put together its own legal team. So as we see, for example, in the Zondo Commission here, or in the court battles on the African continent, we're actually going to see a back and forth on this before it's decided whether there's a recount or not. And this is likely to happen in Michigan, it's likely to happen in Pennsylvania. And perhaps later on we shall see maybe in North Carolina as well as Georgia as the elections come in fact, as well as Arizona.
Donald Trump has wanted to approach the Supreme Court. Tell us when the Supreme Court in America intervenes and what examples have there been of this happening prior to this election?
I think that the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, in the U.S. And therefore, even if it was approached now, it would be a misnomer, legally speaking. Because, first of all, the counting is not yet done. One has to wait until all the ballot is counted. And I think that's a message that Biden was pushing through as a means of fending off this Trump notion that he could just jump all the way to the Supreme Court very quickly. And obviously the Supreme Court is in favor, because there are about 6 judges that are Republican inclined or conservative, and only 3 that are Democratic, of the 9 total. Of the 9 on the bench, as it were. And so he's hoping that after mounting these court battles at the state level, if for one reason or another he fails to click, he fails to manage a reversal that is in his benefit, then he can go to the Supreme Court, which will make a decision that might actually be final. I think we saw this in the 2000 elections, where the contestant on the Democratic side was then or former Vice President Al Gore against George Bush. And the context came down to a very thin lead of just actually nearly about 600 votes by George Bush in East Florida. And the matter went to the Supreme Court because Al Gore also had a majority vote, and he thought that he had won even in Florida, and he wanted a recount and so forth. But then the Supreme Court decided in the favor of George Bush for the simple reason that it was also populated by a Republican majority, and therefore I think this is a precedent that Trump looks to replay in this occasion. But we'll see what happens.
Dr. Bob Wekesa from the African Center for the Study of the United States from the University of the Witwatersrand. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon.